same time, you've got pressure on bar exam results. There's lots of different theories on what happened, but bar pass rates went down. When your bar pass rate goes down, that's putting a ceiling on the JD required jobs that your graduates are getting. So at the same time, there's more encouragement for graduates to take the bar subject courses. So has there been a move at the vast majority of law schools away from seminars on Habermas and theories of law? Yes. Does that mean that theory doesn't have a place? No, theory does have a place. It can help you in your critical thinking ability and understand the purposes of law that helps you go deeper into policy making and legal practice. It just means it has to be a little bit a smaller subset of what the law school experience is than it might have been 25 years ago at some law schools.
What did you do before going into academia? You worked at private practice,
Yep.
right? And so what kind of roles did you have in private practice, and what were you doing there?
Yes, we were keeping the world safe against the little guy. No, we were. So mostly I did some pro bono work, but also represented large corporations in products liability. And a case I spent a ton of time on was as part of a larger team defending the companies that operated the nuclear weapons facilities during the Cold War against class action suits from the area residents who alleged that their various medical conditions were caused by radiation emissions. I spent a ton of time on that. So some products liability, toxic torts, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we're all about asbestos
That's
here.
right.
Yeah,
I work in
asbestos.
toxic tort mass
Hey,
litigation too, so
we have a bond.
there we go. There's to transfer to St. Thomas.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll give you a form.
And so, Anthony works for a firm that does toxic torts, and then behind you, Nick, our podcast consultant, he's actually a scientist, and he's
I analyze asbestos.
he analyzes asbestos.
Awesome. For lawyers, asbestos is the gift that keeps on giving. Because those cases go on.
Still giving. It's still up.
The one fiber rule. If you have one asbestos fiber, you could be held at fault. It's ridiculous.
So
Now that's a defense lawyer in the making.
yeah, Anthony's also protecting us against the little guy. Thank
exactly.
Very good.
you. So why did you decide to become a professor of law and then ultimately becoming the dean of St. Thomas?
So becoming a professor, it's an awesome job when you're intellectually curious and enough of a self-starter that you're going to pursue lines of inquiry that are going to be meaningful for you and hopefully helpful to a broader understanding of the law and its purposes, right? And so I loved being a professor and teaching and writing about legal issues that I was interested in. At a certain point, I started viewing that career track as a little bit too easy for me to stay in my comfort zone. Like when you've taught the same subjects multiple years and you've kind of written books and written law review articles, it's kind of, you've been there, done that. And a lot of faculty are different. They are getting themselves out of their comfort zones regularly. I was a little bit too much stuck in a comfort zone where I wanted a new set of challenges. And going into law school administration, it's a little bit more like the practice of law in the sense that you have a different set of problems that lands on your desk every day, and you got to figure out what you're going to do with it. So that's what the draw was. It's a challenge because you're always being presented with something that you're not sure what you should do, but I think that's like being a lawyer, and I think it's enormously gratifying.
And so how did you actually get into teaching? Did you start off teaching part-time and kind of work your way into full-time, or did you just kind of apply for professor positions? Yeah,
so the law faculty hiring process is strange and dehumanizing. There's a gathering every fall that that is called the meat market. Whether it's
I've heard of this.
yeah, whether it's MEET or MEAT is up to interpretation. But the American Association of Law Schools circulates a huge book, could be 400 candidates with one-page bios and teaching interests, et cetera, that goes to every law school. And the law school appointments committee will look through the whole stack and identify, say, 20 of them, maybe 25 of them that they want to interview in a 30-minute interview. And the law schools will send their teams to this huge hotel, the Wardman Park in Washington, D.C., where all the candidates who are fortunate enough to get interviews will descend for 1-2-day period in the fall, and all the law schools send their appointments committees to do the interviews, and you're just wandering from one hotel room to the next in 30-minute increments, having law professors sit in a circle around you and fire questions at you, and then they'll pick maybe 3 or 4 candidates to invite back to campus to do a full day visit, meet with students, do what's called a job talk, a lunchtime presentation for the whole community, and then they'll decide who they want to hire out of that. So it's not for the faint of heart, but that's how it's been done for a long time.
I'd say MEAT. Yeah.
Yeah, there is. Yeah.
And so how would you describe your role as the Dean of St. Thomas Law?
Well, how would you describe my role as the Dean of St. Thomas
I mean,
Law? You're an
I would
expert.
kind of describe you as kind of the head of St. Thomas Law, but I guess I'm not sure about like what your day-to-day tasks are and who all you're kind of meeting with. But I would say that if you had to put a face in front of St. Thomas Law, it would be yours.
Yes, and it's the same with Dean Jenkins and Dean Gordon, where the dean of the law, if the law school is a corporation, the dean of the law school is the CEO. The associate dean for academics is more like the COO. Like, so in our case, Dean Nichols, he's making a lot of the internal academic decisions about what courses are being offered, which adjuncts are teaching. The dean is external as much as possible. There's some things that we have to do internally. We do all the annual evaluations for faculty and our direct reports on the staff. But a big responsibility we have is fundraising. So we're fundraising, and then we're also the main liaison with university leadership on things. We're responsible for the budget. We're making decisions on hiring new faculty, hiring new staff, admission standards, the kind of priorities, the strategic plan, that sort of thing. So it is a little bit like a CEO role, but it's not. I mean, I'm answerable to the provost of the university. I mean, that's a difference with Mitchell Hamlin, is Dean Gordon is answerable to their board, but he doesn't have a university that's telling him what to do, where Dean Jenkins and I, we have the provost that we report to, then we have the board of the university, the regents or the trustees in our case.
And so are you required to teach as dean, or do you just do that because you love students like me?
Yeah, no, I do it.
Especially you.
Yeah.
I actually do it just because of you.
Yeah.
I said, he's here, I'm in. So, no, I'm not required to teach. Most of the deans at St. Thomas don't teach, but I enjoy teaching, and I think it's helpful. I mean, we have a relatively small full-time faculty, and it's helpful for me to teach, and I enjoy it.
And why did you decide, or what interested you in teaching torts this last semester?
Well, torts is the best subject there is. I mean, I think any rational person will admit that. I like torts both because I had experience practicing in related fields. And for me, torts is the most intuitive and the most grounded in common sense. Not that everything's grounded in common sense in torts, but more so than contracts, I think. I just think it's a fascinating topic. Like, how should we regulate ourselves when we cause harm to one another short of the criminal law and short of attacking each other with clubs. What do we do with that? How do we try to make people whole, and for what? How do we define the concept of harm? What does that look like? So,
You feel like it's because a lot of it is built out of common law that it's instead of politicians kind of making statutes that may or not be grounded in common sense?
Yeah, I mean, it's increasingly moving toward sort of statutory regulatory frameworks, but it's still very much centered in common law more than some other fields are. In the common law, it's not always going to be commonsensical, but it's going to, as it develops gradually over many, many years, I think it's going to resonate more with human intuition about these things than if it's just, here's the code we've developed once and for all, boom.
As a torts professor, are there any hypotheticals that you get tired of hearing students bring up year after year? Is there a specific one that always seems to come up?
Well, what students have the most difficult time getting their heads around is, the lack of a common law duty to rescue.
Oh, yeah.
Right, and so the baby in the puddle.
Yep.
Right.
I remember that one.
So that comes up.
Were you in his class when he was talking about the baby in the puddle?
No, but
'Cause that seemed to come up all
I
the
have
time.
heard about the baby in the puddle.
Yeah, that's the most extreme one, and it's interesting. It's captivating, but it comes up, and I'll just bring it up because students. That's where it pushes back against common sense.
And for our non-legal listeners, what is the baby in the puddle example?
Well, okay, so if you're walking down the street and you see a baby face down in a 1-inch puddle and it's about to drown, and all you have to do is walk over and turn its head to the side, do you have a duty to do it under the common law of tort? No, you can just walk right on by. There's a difference between an act and an omission, and we don't, in the common law, sometimes statutes have tried to change it up a bit, but in the common law, we don't impose liability for omissions unless there's been the affirmative establishment of a duty, such as a teacher-pupil, something like that. But just the bystander walking down the street, just walk by the baby. That's fine. I'm not saying it's morally fine, but for tort liability, that's fine.
I feel like whenever you bring that up, though, the questions keep getting more and more morbid in the class whenever it keeps going on.
Right.
It's like, well, what if the baby's like getting thrown in the air and you could have cut it? It just seems to keep going on.
Same principle. Yeah.
You don't have to catch the baby.
You do not have to, well, my read would be, well, if you said, if you said, throw me the baby,
right,
then
yes.
You're
establishing.
But if you're just walking down the street and someone throws a baby in your direction, then no, you don't have a duty to catch the baby. I guess you'd start getting close if you're taking affirmative steps to avoid the baby that would have come right to you, then I don't know. Now it's getting more interesting.
What if the baby is your student?
They must have done very well on the LSAT then as a baby.
So what is one issue within the legal profession or the legal sphere that you see is going to continue to evolve?
Privacy.
Okay.
We don't have a good handle on privacy and what it means, and the constitutional right to privacy is so contested and so amorphous, and whatever one's view of that right, it as of yet doesn't have much to say about my standing vis-a-vis a telecommunications or internet service provider or a private company with whom I have a commercial relationship, right? What do we do with that? What do we do with the fact that so much of our lives is being possessed by others who can commodify it and do all sorts of things? I mean, I think even this 23andMe, which is taking off, and those companies like, what's happening with all that data, right?
Yeah.
Where does the right of privacy come in there? So, and I'm speaking more as from a torts perspective. Like,
Right.
what are we doing with that? How, the downside of the common law is it can be slow to adjust to facts that are on the ground.